Try and inject a little common sense. Dr. Tracey Wilen is a prominent thought expert, a technologist, and an expert in careers and technology. She's worked for HP and Apple and Cisco and all different kinds of big companies. She travels around the world helping folks learn how to utilize technology and leverage it into their careers. Good morning, Dr. Wilen. How are you?
Oh, good morning.
Thanks for coming in. So we were just talking about Mars and habitats being built there and some of the potential jobs that we may be looking at here in the future in regards to space technology. You've got a whole list of things we could talk about today.
Well, I did. You know, I was inspired on Sunday by the lunar eclipse. And I tell you what really inspired me is, one, you know, the fog lifted and the mist lifted in the Bay Area so we could all see it. But how many girls were out there with their moms? I mean, it was predominantly moms and daughters. And they were just so excited about the whole thing. And they grabbed my binoculars because, you know, it was too far for me to bring a telescope.
Right.
And I didn't see my binoculars for 2 hours because they were just oohing and ahhing over the experience, which is great.
Right. Well,
which makes me think that, you know, that we have budding astronomers in our midst, and this week was so exciting between the eclipse, Mars, the supermoon, and it just felt like this is a planetary week, and why not talk about planetary jobs?
Sure, and we've seen this outgrowth of the STEM, especially for girls and for young women. Science, technology, engineering, and math. I mean, that is the focus for a lot of them, and there are plenty of careers that are opening up in the future for kids and students who are moving in that direction.
Yeah, so when I look up, you know, the jobs, you know, there's, of course, the astronomers, and they're predominantly hired by universities, research kind of positions, teaching positions, government, and, of course, NASA. You know, these are big employers. But here I am in Silicon Valley, and I'm watching Google, right, going into space tourism with SpaceX, Facebook going up into the orbit, right, trying to create internet connections using the balloons, Richard Branson, of course, having his Virgin Galactic. So I think there's a lot of crossover now between, you know, the physics world and also the high-tech world. And, in fact, there's a number of apps out there that are provided for free if, you know, people want to really learn more about astronomy and space.
Well, what's interesting is that it's not just technical jobs as well. I mean, Richard Branson with the Virgin Galactic brings up the whole idea of course, space tourism, which is, I think, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years is definitely going to be a thing. You'll have a service industry that will be able to, you know, to basically be banking on space or low space travel.
That's right, and that's very interesting because as space tourism grows, it's not just about scientists anymore. It's about plumbers who know how to do plumbing in space. It's about tourism, you know, people who understand how to give tours. It's about hotels. It's about taking a lot of the services that we have here and bringing it up into the sky. And I think that's a fascinating and exciting area which I may not be able to experience, but certainly our younger generation might have that opportunity.
Somebody in the Periscope chat room just asked, when are we going to be able to vacation on the moon? I mean, it's going to be a while, but I think eventually those kind of things will be happening, whether it's in the moon or whether it's a space station in low Earth orbit for kind of a high-end getaway or something. I mean, those things are coming.
Oh, yes. In fact, with Richard Branson, and, you know, he's had some of his stops and starts, but you can go and at least tour, right? They are touring now with his space vehicles and piloting a lot of these space orbit types of rides. So it's not too far off, and we need people like Branson and Elon Musk to keep pushing the edge a little bit because it's a big investment. What's exciting that's near me is Google and NASA actually co-share some property in Mountain View, and so there's a lot of collaborations there that's happening. So I think when young people look at science and math, they shouldn't just think about it's very narrow. It's actually, to me, getting much broader.
I look at this and I see where technology is going, and, you know, we've talked in the past about, you know, robotics and robotics engineers and repair and all. I mean, these kind of technologies, which used to be science fiction, are now literally becoming science fact before our eyes, and our kids and our kids' kids will be embracing these kind of things here really in the very near future.
Yes, and actually you bring up a very good point, because I met one of the women designers behind the Mars rover. And, I asked her, what her inspiration was, and she said, if you're a young girl or boy and you're very interested in math and you love looking up at the sky and you're fascinated, go with it, because you just never know where it's going to take you. And it took her into robotics, which is a good point, because robotics will be, we'll need robotics to be able to do a lot of this exploration, to be able to send, different devices into atmospheres where humans can't exist yet. And she said it was just the most exciting challenge that she had. She didn't know where it would take her. Initially, she wanted to be an astronaut, but eventually she designed the rover vehicle and was inspired by just being around smart people who are fascinated with the sky.
One of the things I think that sometimes we have a hard time understanding as adults, especially of our generation, and I think you and I are of a close generation, is I suddenly dawned on me yesterday or day before that my 14-year-old son or 15-year-old son, he literally had never known a day without the internet. That my 18-year-old is basically, been from the very beginnings. And so they're accessing all this technology that to us is still pretty cool and wondrous. They're taking it as a fact of life, and it's changing perceptions and how they do things and how they'll go about their careers in the future.
Yes, and that's why I said, the first thing I need to do, because when I think of space and Mars and Moon, I think of the planetarium, right? So I immediately go out and say, if you're interested in space and the Moon and Mars, go to the planetarium. But then I said, no. With a young kid today, we got to go to the app. So Google has free space apps, NASA has free space apps, and then there's a lot of other apps out there which are also free, called Planets and Invisible Universe and Sun and Moon. And so if you see that your kid is getting excited about, what's happening this week with the planets, I would direct them to some cool apps, so that they can learn for free in real time and watch what's happening out in outer space.
Well, and again, they are going to take things for granted, and they're going to accept things that we ourselves would have a hard time doing. Now, there's things right here in Alaska that we can do. We, of course, up in Fairbanks, they have the big rocketry range up there where they're doing a lot of stuff with rockets in space and the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. Plus, there's some other things that you have found that we're doing here in the state as well.
Well, yes. When I started to do a search of if I was looking for jobs, in outer space, what are the key states that I would look at? Hawaii, of course, came up, but Alaska came up, whether the University of Alaska with the planetarium in Anchorage, to government jobs up in Fairbanks. And, the Northern Lights is so unique, to Norway, Iceland, Alaska. I mean, that I haven't even, that's on my bucket list, by the way.
Get up here and get it done. You'll enjoy it for sure.
Yeah.
Dr. Tracey Wilen, we're out of time. Thanks so much for coming on and joining us. As always, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
We got more coming up. Don't go